Okay, I think we're live. Alright, let me just get this all sorted out. I'll just send a link. Is there a link to this shit? Okay, cool. Cool. God, I'm so pathetic at this shit. So yeah, just get this all sorted out. Tell me if the mic is bad or sounds weird or anything like that, and I will, because I'm using OBS, but I haven't really used OBS before. But yeah, just let me know if there are any kind of audio problems or anything like that, and I will fix them. Okay, all right, here we go. Share. I'll just put this on Twitter. All right, hi everyone. Got some people in here already, that's good. And I'll get to the meat. Live now, discussing Bloodborne. Forbidden Woods. Okay. Cool. No, we've got a topic already, Joey, which I'll be getting into soon. Wow, we've already got like 20 people. That's great. Okay, so as you know, I've made a couple of videos talking about how I'm branching out in terms of stuff, but also going to be talking about Bloodborne as well. So that's still definitely on the cards. And I've actually got my new topic that I'm getting into, which will be the Forbidden Woods, which is a topic I've always found really interesting. And so that's what I'll be talking about today. I've got my Bloodborne up on my other screen, but I don't actually know how to set my PS4 to use this microphone, which is my good one. So I thought, you know, I'll have access to my script here and everything, and I'll just be able to talk about it through there. So, the Forbidden Woods, something that's interested me for a long time, but I don't actually know how to set and this is where I'll kind of explain where I'm going with this. So this is the script as I'm working on it at the moment, but we'll kind of hash it out and I'll let you know where I'm going with it. And I need to be able to keep an eye on the chat as well to see what's going on there. What's a good way of doing this? Maybe I can do this. This would be good. I've also got Google Hangouts, so if anyone wants to jump on and talk with me, that's fine. Just private message me on Twitter or contact me on the Discord and just let me know what your details are. I think I just need like your Gmail email address, and it'll be able to I'll be able to talk with you and just kind of invite you in, and we can do it like that. And we'll go from there. Okay, so Google Hangout. Yeah, alright, all good. So I think I just start it when I want to do that. That's fine. So yeah, I'll put a link to the Discord in the chat as well. Let's put it live now. One sec, let me just get this. I'm so fucking useless at this shit. Where's the fucking invite thing? Alright, okay. Okay, I'm putting a link to the Discord in the chat. So if you want to get in on the actual live chat and speak with me on here while I go through this, just go into the Discord and message me directly. I should be a name in there that you can just click on and message directly. And just send me your... What do I need to do this? New conversation. Okay, so I think I can do it if it comes up with like a Gmail account or something like that. I just realized people's phone numbers are showing. Okay, that's not so good. Whatever. yeah, just send me through like your Google details, and I should be able to actually just send you a link to the Hangout, and then you should be able to come on. But yeah, anyway, so let's get into this for the moment. So yeah, so the topics that I'd be looking at in the script would be like the Forbidden Woods with a focus on the snakes, the Madaras twins, Valtr, and the giant sanctuary. So with the Madaras twins, I'll bring up a picture of the butcher garb. Bloodborne. So the butcher garb is found in it's actually found in the DLC, but its kind of place in the world of Bloodborne is really inside the Forbidden Woods. And the deal with the butcher's garb is this was the property of the older Madaras twin, I believe. So the Madaras twins were two people that guarded the Forbidden Woods. Um, I'm just bringing up the wiki page so I can have a look at the description. Yeah, so it reads Garb of the Madaras twins, denizens of the Forbidden Woods, likely belonging to the older of the two, which is something that should strike you pretty immediately because the summonable person who wears these clothes is the younger Madaras twin. And that's because the older Madaras twin is actually dead. And that older Madaras twin you do actually interact with is that skeleton guy at the start of the Forbidden Woods area who kind of lets you through once you recite the Bergenworth um, motto, kind of the credo, the fear the old blood. That's the older Madaras twin who is already dead, which is a bit confusing, obviously. Like, why can you talk to him if he's already dead? And that, I think, can be rationalized fairly straightforward with the kind of concept I've brought up before regarding how someone can be dead in the quote unquote waking world but alive in the dream world. And that applies to Mikolash, number one, who's alive in the dream world but dead in the waking world. So your consciousness can essentially become trapped in the dream world. Applies to Mikolash, Maria, and perhaps Gammon. So that's really interesting, and I guess applies to the older Madaras twin as well, because either that or wouldn't make any sense. That's the way I kind of break it down and rationalize it. Let's see here. Okay. So it says both the twins became hunters and brought back and dissected their beast prey in order to support the villagers in their forbidden research. So the twins, it seems, were somewhat caretakers of the Forbidden Woods for a time, which is really interesting. It seems like there was this kind of split off society within the Forbidden Woods that was not a part of Yharnam. And let's see what I've written in the script. Let's see here. This is word for word on the first paragraph. The first character we meet is the older of the Madaras twins, who is a gatekeeper of the Forbidden Woods even in death. Many have been confused as to why he is able to speak and act out his role as a corpse, but I would point to both Maria and Mikolash's explanations. We know from our encounters with these characters that one can be dead in the waking world but alive in the dreamlands. This might seem like a crude example, but Inception could be looked at to understand this to a degree. If we look at the dreamlands as levels or tiers with the waking world at the bottom, one's body could be stuck in either the waking world or a lower tier of the dreamlands, while their consciousness remains on a higher plane. This is seen through the examples of Mikolash being dead in Yahargul and alive in the Nightmare of Mensis. However, it's interesting that Mikolash laments the fact that he will wake up, implying that he isn't really dead at all. Regardless of this, on the night of the hunt, the older twin is dead, while the younger twin is alive. And then we'll talk about a bit more specifically about the Madaras, whistles, and the snakes a little bit later. I'm going to actually get to, in my game, the Forbidden Woods, just so I'm actually walking through it and discuss it. I'm actually wanting to do, obviously, a dedicated, straight up video on the Forbidden Woods, but I thought it'd be fun to kind of hash out some stuff with you guys and see if you've noticed anything that I might not have noticed. I love you too, Jabobok 786. Okay, so Yes, I mean the Forbidden Woods is really interesting because you got the snakes and everything. Now, to start off with the snakes, just to kind of give you a general example of my thoughts initially on what those could mean, I feel like it's a very simple explanation that a lot of people might have skipped over as to what they're doing there. Now, I think this is explained pretty clearly through the description of the Hintertomb Chalice. Now, the description of the Hintertomb Chalice literally reads, the Hintertombs are unceremonious homes to graves and deaths, cesspools of noxious snakes and insects. So from this we can gather that the snakes most likely are natives to the Hintertombs, which are a Chalice dungeon. They're connected to the Thumerians in that way. And the Hintertombs are kind of interesting because they seem to be kind of the furthest reaches of the Chalice dungeons. Like you can think of Thumeru and Thumeria, kind of the central hub of the Chalice dungeons, while the Hintertombs are kind of the Balkan furthest areas apart, furthest areas from the hub in that respect. So that would kind of lead to the geography within the Chalice dungeons changing, and obviously you have snakes and such moving about. So I'm just getting to the Forbidden Woods. And the society in the Forbidden Woods all has its own kind of society and all this stuff it's really interesting that I didn't really pick up on before. That they're essentially split off from Yharnam and they have their own kind of native people living out there. But we'll go over that. Okay, Alejandro. Well, we haven't really got into too much yet. We're just kind of setting up what I'm talking about. So we'll be discussing the Forbidden Woods. I'm going to be doing a video on that shortly. It was kind of between discussing the Forbidden Woods on live stream or me continuing to work on the video itself. But I thought it'd be fun just to kind of talking through the concept in general. What's Clonflag Gregonda asked, do you think that the snakes gaining their abilities proportions in some natural way from coming from the Chalice dungeons or somehow through the interactions with the Madaras twins? Very good question. Actually have a pretty much exact answer for that. There is an item description that references the size of the snakes pretty explicitly. I'll see if I can bring it up in the wiki. My internet speed's slowed down a bit since I'm doing the stream, but I believe it comes from the fact that the Madaras twins were feeding, because they grew up. They actually were born in the Forbidden Woods. Okay, I've got it here. Actually, it's a description of the Madaras whistle. Just give me 1 second to bring this up. Okay, here we go. So the twins, the Madaras twins, grew up alongside a poisonous snake and developed a silent inhuman kingship. So you can kind of raised by snakes kind of thing is quite interesting. The poisonous snake, is this what you're asking? The poisonous snake grew uncontrollably, raised on a healthy diet of beast entrails. So there you go. So the snakes were being fed, or at least this one snake, which arises from the Madaras whistle, was being fed the entrails of beasts, or humans that have transformed into beasts after drinking the old blood. So that's a very astute kind of understanding that we have there. Even in their deaths, so of the twins, it is said to respond to the call of the twins' whistle from within the nightmare. So yeah, there you go. The snakes grow in size due to the beast entrails or blood that they're eating and drinking. So yes, through the interactions with the Madaras twins, precisely. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so the entrance to the Forbidden Woods is really interesting. Apart from the fact that you do obviously have to talk to a dead guard, the dead Madaras twin who lets you in, who we've already discussed. There's quite a lot of interesting kind of structural details regarding the entrance to the Forbidden Woods. I'm just going up there myself so I can have a proper look, because it's totally different from the rest of Yharnam, really. there's a lot of structural collapse. There's a lot of, it looks like the floor has kind of fallen through from the upper levels down to the bottom. Things have kind of fallen apart. I believe that obviously the Forbidden Woods once a popular kind of segue between the city and Bergenworth, but it's since obviously become shut off, and unable to be used. So okay, yeah. So here we see in this area, in this kind of intro area to, obviously you can't see it on your screen, but it's here on my screen. At the entrance to the Forbidden Woods, just kind of surrounding the dead Madaras twin, are these kind of clay pots. And they're shatterable, so you can break them. And inside are human bones. Now, Redgrave kind of addressed this in one of his videos, not the pot specifically, but the fact that details shouldn't just be kind of moved over if they've been put in Bloodborne, just as because they're supposed to be spooky. There's a lot of definite lore links that we've discovered. Talk about Sam Hyde. Don't worry, we'll be talking about Sam Hyde at some point. I can tell. Okay. See you, Alejandro. This will be probably uploaded later, that you can probably watch it when it's not streaming. Yeah. So anyway, Redgrave was going over why, for instance, the caravans and the kind of carriages that you see in central Yharnam, like what's the point of those? Are they just supposed to be spooky? But he correctly ascertained that those same carriages are found in Yahargul. And they're filled with the cramped caskets, which are basically those collection of corpses. So the corpses of people that were dying in central Yharnam were being taken to Yahargul for the Mensis rituals and Mensis research, which makes perfect sense. With Rodrigo, with the gatekeeper, actually, I think you're right. I might be getting confused there. Yeah, because one of them is the Graveguard set. And the other is the Madaras twin. I actually think you're right. It's not a big detail if I mess that up, because we're still discussing them separately, but I will confirm what you said. I think you're actually right. It's not a big deal if they're not twins. They're still, obviously one discussed. Yes, you're right. Sorry. So yeah, I got the mix up with two loyal servants versus the two twins. So yeah, the gatekeeper is one of the servants of Willem and Bergenworth, so not a part of the healing church. One was said to keep the gatekeeper away. One to gatekeeper to keep people away from entering the Forbidden Woods. So good pick up on that, Rodrigo. You are absolutely 100% right in that. My mistake. Yeah, so I'll come back to the Graveguard robe and that kind of allegiance to Bergenworth a little bit later. Anyway, yeah, so back to these clay pots that are shattered that you can that are filled with bones. So with these, it's interesting because you'll find in the Forbidden Woods there's a lot of bodily remains, a lot of bones and everywhere along the place, which again could just be kind of, you could say, creepy garnish, but I don't think so. I think what was happening is there is the kind of concept of Yharnam running out of places to store their dead and storing corpses after a while. When so many people started to die, this was something that's been experienced in other societies throughout history. For instance, the Romans tried to, if they could, build any catacombs outside of their main cities. So any cities that required catacombs to bury their dead were normally placed around a kilometer or two outside the gates of the main city. This was to prevent overcrowding in the city itself, prevent any kind of structural instability that might relate to kind of excavating below cities, and to just kind of spiritual reasons, keeping out, the dead, not having remains buried right underneath your city if it can be avoided. So this is something that I think might have been going on with Yharnam as well. I think there was an active effort to kind of move corpses out of the city. And if you kind of imagine the Forbidden Woods being on the perimeter of Yharnam to an extent, I think you can definitely kind of rationalize it that way. That's what I would say, at least. Okay. So even if we go into, when we descend into the Forbidden Woods itself, just in the first area, there are graves kind of stacked everywhere, and there's bones all over the floor that haven't been buried properly, which at least kind of implies to me mass graves, that they're kind of hurriedly and haphazardly burying these people, you know, outside of Yharnam as best they could. Because you got to think, yes, apart from the overcrowding issue, there's also there's, I'm just gonna make sure no one's messaged me on the Discord. I didn't even check. Okay, all good. um oh, good to see Dark Blood Souls. Don't worry, we're pretty much just getting started. So yeah, apart from the issue of overcrowding of corpses that we might be seeing in Yharnam, which is causing things to be moved outside of the city, it's also, you got to consider, there are some caskets in central Yharnam that are chained shut. Now, initially I thought, you know, it might have been a bit of a trope, you know, to keep the corpses from reanimating and escaping from the coffins, which is a possibility. But at the same time, the coffins that are chained up are almost always the most ornate coffins that can be seen on the street. Now, put yourself in the shoes of part of the Yharnam wealthy class. Say if one of your loved ones has just died, you're not going to want to have their remains messed with, basically. Now, we already know that beasts like the snakes live off beast entrails, and we know that most likely there are beings in Yharnam like the dogs and the lycanite kind of werewolves. They're going to want to be eating corpses. We see that in Yosefka's blood clinic when we see that wolf kind of eating that Yharnamite on the floor. I think these chains were put on the coffins to kind of prevent beasts from going into the coffins and basically eating the corpses of their loved ones. Is a good thing to do with that. But obviously they're being put on the corpses to be kind of wheeled out of the city, either with Yahargul basically stating, oh no, they're going to be buried just outside of the city on a nice little plot, but instead they're they're being taken out of the city and dumped in the woods. And that's actually extrapolated on a little bit later when we get closer to the giant sanctuary, which we'll be discussing as well. What else have I got here? Yeah. All right. So let's talk a bit about the landscape of the Forbidden Woods. The landscape is really strange. I know there's not a whole lot to see in terms of visuals at the moment. But just let me know. I can always put like a Bloodborne. Actually, I might do that. Bloodborne wallpaper, just to make it a little bit more, less monochromatic, I guess. But yeah, just okay. Yeah, let's just do Maria. Why not? Okay, so yeah, so we're discussing the landscape. So the landscape of the Forbidden Woods obviously is like super weird, like super strange, and I think you guys would agree with that. It's just really odd. It's kind of got these bizarre hillocks and crevices and caves that just kind of run downwards. Very strange in the way that that's all set up. Now this could just be like a design choice. Okay, fuck that. That's not gonna work. All right, whatever. Hi Damien, thanks for tuning in. So like the whole of like the Forbidden Woods doesn't really make a lot of sense structurally. And the area seems to have been closed off, but at some point, that's the really interesting part, is the fact that it was closed off by Bergenworth. They didn't want people coming here, so they kind of put a password keeper at the gate. Now, I think it's entirely possible that since Yharnam have hunters, these hunters would have ventured into the Forbidden Woods to, hunt, even recreationally. The woods would be a pretty good place to do it. So I believe, a sizable chunk of people may have been in the Forbidden Woods at the time that it was closed off and kind of quarantined by Bergenworth to kind of contain anyone from getting to the manor. and there's quite a large group of people. There's an executioner, for lack of a better term. There's the normal Yharnamites with guns. There's Yharnamites in the village below. There's the beggar. There's and we'll be talking about as much of this as we can. And so these people seem to have developed their own society. Now, I say this because the Madaras twins kind of discuss it as if, whenever the Madaras twins are like referenced, it's kind of as if they were part of their own society. I think it's in the garb. I'll see if I can find the description, because I think I've seen this somewhere. Yeah, so, I mean, both the twins became hunters and brought back and dissected their beast prey, specifically probably in the village below, in order to support the villagers in their forbidden research. So the Madaras twins were conducting their own research in the village, while obviously you've got Mensis doing their own, you've got Bergenworth doing their own, and you've got the Madaras twins kind of doing their own. What is interesting is there's the beast blood pellets, which are found. They're actually found both in the Nightmare and in the Forbidden Woods. Is the stream fucking up, Kyle? I can't tell myself. But if we look at the let me just bring one up. I think I got one in my inventory. Or maybe not. Let me get the beast blood pellet up. Okay. Well, you're just here for my lovely voice anyway, not that it matters. So the beast blood pellet is interesting. I wasn't 100% sure what to think about the beast blood pellet originally, but I'll bring it up now and see what I can tell you about it. So let's just say hypothetically that the beast blood pellet was developed in... Okay, my dog's freaking out. Hey, stop that. Sit. Hey, Homer. Stop making noise. This is important Bloodborne stuff going on. Sorry. Okay. So let's have a look at this. So large medicinal pellets, supposedly formed of coagulated beast blood, banned by the healing church due to their unclear origin, grants a spurt of beasthood. Ripping apart the flesh of one's enemies and being rained upon by their spattering blood invigorates one's senses of beasthood, feeding strength and euphoric feeling alike. Now, obviously, the most interesting thing about this is the fact that it's got an unclear origin, and the healing church were like, okay, well, we don't know where it's come from, let's ban it. That's kind of their attitude towards it. They only want Yharnamites to be, obviously ingesting things that they've developed and they can kind of control and understand themselves. But the beast blood pellets obviously have no place within this, so they could have been developed by Mensis, or they could have been developed by the Madaras twins in the village, or they could have come outside from both of these areas totally. And hey Marvin, how's it going? And yeah, so I mean the afflicted beggar actually gives you a beast blood pellet once he's in if you kill him after the Yusefka's clinic, if you send him to Yusefka's clinic, I believe. So, I mean, he's found in the Forbidden Woods, so it could either come from his homeland or the Forbidden Woods themselves. So let's continue on the script, see what else we've got to discuss. Okay, yeah, something else I noticed when going through the Forbidden Woods again is if you look inside the lanterns that are kind of everywhere along the paths in the Forbidden Woods, there actually seems to be something burning within the lanterns, like a little four-legged kind of animal. I thought it was actually kind of like a baby at first, but they haven't gone that dark, thankfully. And yeah, so I would recommend next time you're in the Forbidden Woods, go into that area, go into the Forbidden Woods and look inside the lanterns. It's kind of like burnt to a crisp little kind of like quadruped in there, which I can't really identify what it is. It looks like it could be like a little small dog or something like that. But I thought that was an interesting touch. Okay, so what have we got here? Okay, so then we've got the flowers that are found throughout the Forbidden Woods that are really interesting. Uh, in one of the passages through the Forbidden Woods, you can see that there's just a shit ton of dead flowers everywhere. And they don't look dead until you kind of look close to them. You notice that they're facing downwards, and they've kind of got like a yellowish tinge to them. Sorry, I'm just being attacked. Let's get this shit out of the way. Um, yeah, so there's like these dead flowers all over the place, and I had a little bit of a closer look at them and see what we could find out about them. So they're not cold blood flowers, which are something that you can collect to access different chalice dungeons and the like. So I don't think they're cold blood flowers. They just look too different. These ones have got too many petals. Well, the cold blood flowers do at least. So I think they're actually lilies. I had a look at some flowers, on the internet, and they appear to be lilies. Now, traditionally, lilies are supposed to symbolize beauty and purity. And the fact that these flowers, I'm just reading from the script here, and the fact that these flowers are actually dead may imply that the Forbidden Woods may have once been a place of natural significance and natural beauty, but has since kind of been lost in the wake of industrialization and decay of Yharnam and the surrounding area. Ironically, lilies are also synonymous with death and are often presented during funerals. Now, I thought that was kind of interesting. The fact that obviously Yharnam references to a degree visually these kind of Victorian cities when they became increasingly industrialized to the detriment of the environment that surrounded these cities. This was seen pretty heavily in like cities like Manchester, areas like that in the UK, which were kind of the first to kind of move a lot of their populace out of agrarian type environments and surroundings and into cities instead. So I thought that was kind of interesting because it's obvious that the Forbidden Woods has suffered quite dramatically due to the involvement of the Healing Church and what's happened there. So I thought that was interesting. And then the next bit's just about the beast blood pellets, which I've already talked about. Okay. Right. Okay. So I'll talk about just because the next in the script, talk a bit more about the butcher's garb, which it does discuss what happened to the older brother. So, and this kind of comes into where the League is kind of involved with the twins, because the younger Madaras twin does become summonable once you're a member of the League. And I wonder. Okay, yeah. So the description of the butcher mask reads: when they discovered Vermin, even in the beloved snake, the younger brother is said to have murdered the older, which I thought was really interesting. So it seems like Valtr or whoever has recruited the younger Madaras twin into the League, and once they were a part of the League, they noticed that Vermin was discoverable within their snake. The snake that they kind of grew up alongside, which I thought is pretty fascinating that it's present in the snake. Now, quickly, if we look at the description of Vermin, it reads, a centipede-like creature discovered on successful hunts by League hunters. Vermin found hidden within filth are only seen by the League Confederates and are the root of man's impurity. The League has assumed the task of finding and crushing all vermin. Perhaps there is some mercy in the madness. Those who wish to see vermin can, and those who choose to are provided with boundless purpose. So vermin, personally, what I think about vermin is kind of like this latent or innate parasite that lives within all humans. And the fact that once this vermin comes into contact with the old blood, through, Yharnamites ingesting it or having transfusions of it, this vermin kind of swells, becomes more powerful within the human, and essentially allows that human to transform into an actual beast. And that's done through the vermin coming into contact with blood. So it would then make sense for it would then make sense for the Confederates to kind of see the vermin within the blood of man, the blood of humans, and want to destroy it, because that's a thing. So yeah, I don't think vermin, Eric, is a sickness, but rather vermin is something that kind of lives within all people and is the catalyst for beasthood. Once people come into contact with beast blood, vermin becomes stronger, allowing beasthood to actually happen. So it becomes more of a parasitic relationship, and might be the fact why they have less control over themselves once they're in their beastly state. So yeah, Quicksilver, I think I kind of agree with Redgrave on his kind of summation that Erden and the blood of Erden kind of it's like mercury, and then mercury is kind of poisonous to humans and makes humans go crazy. Go watch his video; he's much better at explaining it than I am. So yeah, it's interesting how only one of the Madaras twins was swayed into becoming a Confederate. I think that's interesting, kind of more susceptible to their kind of mission, and that's kind of where they sit. We'll continue because this script is only still half finished, but I still thought it'd be fun to talk to you guys about it. Okay, let's have a look here. What have I got? Right. Now it's interesting that they dissected. I believe it says so they dissected their beast prey. That was both the twins. So essentially, perhaps before they became hunters of the League, they might have become separated. Now, obviously the role. Sorry, I'm getting a bit distracted here. Let me get this together. Okay. So obviously when they were both bringing back before they understood that the beast entrails were corrupting their snake and giving rise to the vermin within it, they were feeding it to the snake. Now, obviously this makes a ton of sense because the name of the Madaras' outfit is butcher garb. They're butchers. Butchers cut up meat for it to be consumed. Now, that's really interesting because if they were kind of acting as literal butchers, cutting up beasts and distributing it for it to be eaten, that might have extended not only to their snake, but also to the villagers of the Forbidden Woods. And that might give rise to... Now, I haven't looked into this closely, but the accursed beggar is eating the flesh of people. And, it being, the villagers being fed beast entrails and beast meat might have given rise to that sense of cannibalism because beasts are essentially people. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Let me see here. But I'm also kind of conflicted on this because the name of the butcher set in the Japanese version of the game, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but I'm going to try it anyway, is Fuwake no Shozuku. With Fuwake, the first word there being in reference specifically to dissection and autopsy from a medical point of view, not butchering as would be for just giving out meat to people. What's my feels? I think the brother saw the vermin in the snake and realized the older brother was feeding the snake people, beast people, and destroyed his corrupt and the younger view's brother. Yeah, so there's definitely a schism between the two, which is, it's really kind of interesting that that exists within the game. I kind of like that. So let's have a look at the village itself, because I think there are a lot of interesting revelations in reference to the village itself, which you kind of find centralized to the Forbidden Woods in a way. It's kind of in the middle. It's a middle point where there's a kind of bunch of different paths that you can take. And I'm going to just get there so I can have a look at it myself, because I've got notes, but also want to see if I can see anything myself. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about the snakes. I think the snakes are natives to the Hintertombs, which are a Chalice dungeon, but I will kind of discuss how they actually got to the surface. There's a couple theories I have as to why they're actually in the Forbidden Woods and not the Chalice dungeons where they should be, natively speaking, of course. So let's sort of got here. So I think we can say possibly that this village, this centralized area with the big hole in the middle, no doubt you know what I'm talking about, was kind of the village. And this is where the Madaras twins operated out of. Now, this big hole in the middle really interested me. Now, obviously, to us, it's a trap. We go in there, there's birds at the bottom. We don't know it's going to fall apart, but I think it actually has a literal story meaning as well, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. I think you guys all know about when I talk about there's a big kind of crevice in the middle that has all these planks across it, and if you walk across the planks, it breaks under your weight. Now, there are a few ideas as to what I have about, what it is. So this is what I've written in the script. I'll read it out and then kind of go into more detail in a sec. Okay, so below the starting area, we find the village or remains of the village that the twins no doubt had operated within. Curiously, there appears to be a great big hole and or trap in the center of the village that has been covered with a weak layer of wood. I would have one other guess as to what this could be, an excavation. So I think this hole in the middle was actually, because it's not natural. It's not a natural hole. Like it's completely, it doesn't look like it's natural. It's been dug down on purpose, and it has like a ladder coming out of it. So obviously, I think they were actually coming down here on purpose. And on one side of this hole, it's actually been dug out a little bit further, which implies to me that they dug down and then continued to dig horizontally. So that was something really interesting that I kind of thought about. And again, so the Hintertombs are unceremonious homes to graves and death, cesspools of noxious snakes and insects. So this, I feel, would have been one kind of attempt to actually access the Hintertombs without use of a chalice. Because I do believe that the Chalice dungeons actually exist in a physical form below the surface of Yharnam. I believe Alfred or Gammon says that, they exist physically. And of course, the Bergenworth folks did go down there at some point. Now, the Hintertombs are kind of under the woods, I believe, while the Thumerian capital and stuff might be under Yharnam itself. So, let's see, what was I saying? Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the caves with the giants as well. No, don't worry about that. So yeah, to think about that as a literal excavation might have been, interesting. And whether that was conducted by the natives of the village or Bergenworth or the Healing Church is kind of up for debate. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I definitely thought it could be connected in a way, maybe not physically to the giant cave. Now, I will go and talk about, I might come back to this area a little later, but I want to talk to the guy who gives you the Tonsil stone as well. So we can think about, we can talk about the kind of the Tonsil stone a little bit as well. So what I've, because I've written this not, yesterday, I need to actually read to remind myself. So something that is interesting is that there seems to be perhaps one remaining villager of the Forbidden Woods, like a natural, like that it will actually talk to you and won't just attack you on sight. He gives you the Tonsil stone and seems to have a knowledge somewhat of what is pale blood. He talks about the fact that dying does not release you from the dream, and that it is not you who drinks the blood, but rather it is the blood that drinks you, which I thought is really interesting. Like it imbibes you rather than you imbibing the blood. So there are a number of dogs in this area as well, which could have belonged to either the church or the villagers, for all we know, because we're not 100% sure of the chronology. The Tonsil stone itself is curious, which implies that it has actually could have actually been a meteorite and fallen to Earth. Since we do not know if the person who gives you this is native to the Forbidden Woods or not, we won't discuss this too much, but it's interesting nonetheless and might imply that the Forbidden Woods may have had a connection to the Great Ones, independent of Bergenworth or the church. The fact that the white church set is found nearby is curious. I'm not sure what it could mean. Perhaps the Healing Church had sent scouts into the Forbidden Woods. Considering the fact that Yuri is discovered at Bergenworth, it's a possibility. So Rodrigo says, well, since the woods connect to the city via the Giant's Cave, the village may have been a covert attempt to excavate. Yeah, that's possible. And it's also interesting as to considering which direction that entrance was being used. So could it have been used by both the villagers and the Yharnamites to travel to the Forbidden Woods? And I say that because if after we fight the bloodletting beast and we go down, that big pillar, it's you pass by the old workshop where you find the quickening bone. If we go in that area down the bottom, you also find the sweaty Yharnam clothes down there. There are Yharnamites walking down there wearing the butcher's garb. And isn't that interesting? That there are Yharnamites wearing the clothes worn by the Forbidden Woods natives. So you could say that maybe it wasn't the villagers that excavated their way up into Yharnam. It could have been the other way around. But it was being used both ways, by Yharnamites to get into the Forbidden Woods and Forbidden Woods natives to get into Yharnam, which they were closed off from. Which interests me, because they were going in to find more beast bodies to dissect and things like that. Now we'll be discussing those caves in more detail specifically. I have spoken about them a little bit in my Cold Blood video, but I'm going to discuss it a little bit more. Now, once we enter this cave, which is just kind of connected to the Forbidden Woods, it's kind of this cavern that it exists in its initial stage, and there are these there's tomb mold all over the place, and tomb mold's kind of interesting. If we have a look at the description of tomb mold, we can kind of get a sense about what that is. So those are those spores coming out of the ground. And this, I think, is kind of a confirmation more than anything that Chalice dungeons do exist physically and not just kind of within like a dream or something like that. So if we read the description of the tomb mold, it reads, mold that grows from rotten flesh and blood inside the old labyrinth, matures to bear giant spores. So I've talked about cold blood kind of living on as its own organism, and I would say that tomb mold kind of grows out of blood, out of remains that have died within the chalices specifically, the chalice dungeon specifically. And if we look around, like right next to the tomb mold are corpses and skeletons and rotten corpses and stuff like that. So that would make sense to me. Now, the further we, it's actually interesting as well. There are skeletons in this area that are like much bigger than normal humanoids, which makes me think that there could have been like Thumerians dying in this area as well. And the fact that Thumerians probably almost definitely had encounters with humanoids humans is definitely feasible and plausible. Eric asks, do you think the Tonsil stone is an amygdala thing that fell from a dream above Yharnam? Well, if we think about as the whole world being split into tiers of dreams, it's definitely possible. Like anything that falls from the sky. I mean, the Tonsil stone is not the only reference to like a meteorite in the game. If we have a look at, I don't actually have the burial blade on this character, I think. But I think the burial blade, the description of the burial blade talks about it being made from siderite. And siderite's talked about as being the remains of a meteorite or something that fell to the earth. So again, that's like this kind of holy element or something, at least in the perspective of Bloodborne, and that's a kind of importance to that. So it's definitely possible, Eric. I like that idea. Now, the cave proper, kind of as you go down where it gets kind of like a little beach, there's some sand, there's water, and there's got like stalactites and graves and giants everywhere. This place is fascinating. I really, really like this place, and I've kind of gone to calling it colloquially the Giant Sanctuary. Obviously, because it is a sanctuary for giants, this is a place where they aren't subjugated by the healing church. By the looks of things, they're not wearing the garb of the healing church. They're not handling weapons. They're just kind of down here by themselves, living in relative harmony. So let's have a look here. What have I written? So this is what I think is at the edge, or maybe even slightly inside a Chalice dungeon. Even though it doesn't say we're in a Chalice dungeon, it has a lot of characteristics that are synonymous with a Chalice dungeon. It's got the tomb mold, it's got giants, and most notably, it has the parasite worms, which are found, are supposed to be native to the Chalice dungeons. These parasite worms, and if we kind of compare them with Vermin, they're kind of similar in some ways, because obviously there's the boss fight that we can have in the Chalice dungeons. I think it's the bloodletting beast. And the bloodletting beast is got this giant parasite worm that comes out of its head, which is kind of similar to what Vermin would do, I suppose. I'm just being attacked by a whole bunch of them at the moment, so just excuse me a second so I can focus on what I'm talking about. But it's interesting because and it's got these giant, huge graves which are found deeper in the Chalice, deeper in the Forbidden Woods, and also in the Nightmare Frontier. Now, yeah, I reckon this is part of a Chalice dungeon, and whether it was found on purpose or by accident is kind of up for debate as well. So yeah, Rodrigo's that it's Siderite, which has fallen from the heavens, or from a kind of a plane of existence above Yharnam. Now, if we progress through the giant cave, it gets really interesting, and I think this is, if you'll remember when I was talking about near the beginning about Yharnam basically dumping a lot of their dead out here. This is what I'll be talking about, is if we progress through the cave, kind of going towards the ladder that leads out of it towards Yharnam, there are a ton of bones at the bottom of this ladder. So bones, right? Now, if we progress up the ladder, which is quite tall, so just give me a second as I climb up the ladder and we can continue discussing this. What a thrill. And so if we go up further, we kind of look around the outcroppings that kind of go around that area as we climb up the ladder. There are bodies, kind of in an area that they wouldn't have been able to die in, as if they've been thrown down. So we come up to this area, which is just below Yosefka's clinic. And just before we actually get up into that shortcut, there are bodies again everywhere. And then if we get up again further, right up into the graveyard itself, just behind or to the side of adjacent to Yosefka's clinic, we're in a graveyard. Now, obviously, within most graves, there's only supposed to be one corpse. But as we can see, in this grave, there's been dozens and dozens of bodies dumped in this area, unceremoniously. So this would imply to me that Yosefka was, any patients that have died were just dumped into this grave, and then it was buried over again and used again and again, and it was as it was needed. But that kind of goes back to the idea of Yharnam moving their dead out of the city as they were kind of running out of space. So that's interesting. I'd love to hear what you have to think about that. We can see literally around this area there's coffins waiting to be lowered in, and very ornate ones with locks on it, like we talked about. But obviously the locks weren't really used much, obviously, if their dead was just cracked out of these coffins and dumped into the hole, to obviously make way for more room. But that's an idea that I had regarding that. We're getting kind of to the end of where I've written this speech, but it's the script rather, but we'll continue kind of ad hoc, because I still want some of this to be discussed in the video. Yeah, Yosefka is trash. She's a bitch. So theoretically, it seems that patients had died, that stopped being carted away and were simply disposed when they were no longer needed after the of all their organs and all the necessary parts that could be reused and then just kind of dumped. So I'm going to head back into the Forbidden Woods and keep discussing it. I'm going to be off script now, so I'd encourage you to include your ideas in the chat in case I miss anything, because obviously I probably will, because I still want to talk about Valtr and stuff like that. But yeah, this won't go on for too much longer, I don't think, but we'll keep going for now. Something I did want to mention, something I did not realize, is that those huge, again, I'm going to keep calling them executioners, even though it's probably not the right term in this instance, but those guys with the huge axes and the hooded coverings and everything, I used to think that they were allied with the executioners, as in like Alfred the executioner, but I have a feeling now that that might have been the wrong assertion to make. And the reason I say that is because if we look at the back of a corpse of these executioners, I know you can't see it on your screen, they have the exact same emblem that the butcher's garb have. It's this kind of like, how can I describe it? It's kind of like a fork-like shape emblem, and it's not the Healing Church insignia, because they have their own insignia. This one's unique. Now, this would seem to imply that these executioners that we find in a couple of places are actually allied with the Forbidden Woods rather than the Healing Church and the executioners, which is something that I really didn't realize, and something I wish that I had kind of realized earlier, but I didn't. So that's something I'd like to hear your thoughts on, because I always assume them to be part of the Healing Church, but everything that, you know, the fact that they have the literal emblem that's used by the natives of the Forbidden Woods makes me think otherwise. Okay, what else have we got here? So if we go through here, so the Forbidden Woods, obviously it's its own society. We do find the beast roar. Basically you could say like arcane tool, which is and I'll have a look at the description, but it seems like if the beast blood pellets were developed in the Forbidden Woods, I don't think it would be too hard to say that the beast's roar might have also been developed in the Forbidden Woods, you know, as they both kind of have ties to beasthood. So let's have a look at this. So the beast roar description reads, one of the forbidden hunter tools made by irreverent Izzy. Now let's go through this slowly. So forbidden hunter tool. So it was forbidden. Now what else was forbidden? The beast blood pellets were forbidden as well in Yharnam and banned by the Healing Church because they had an unclear origin. So likewise, the beast roar tool might have been forbidden because, again, of its unclear origin or the fact that it was not made by the Healing Church. So it says, borrow the strength of the terrible undead dark beasts, if only for a moment, to blast surrounding foes back with the force of a roaring beast. Now, that's kind of interesting because it talks about dark beasts. And dark beasts are obviously more associated with Archibald, which, you know, doesn't really fit in, and like the Spark Hunters. So if we have a look at, and I say that because like the Dark Beast, obviously Dark Beast Paarl, and we get the Spark Hunter badge, I believe, from defeating Paarl. And if we read the description of that, it reads, badge crafted in secret by Archibald, the infamous eccentric of the Healing Church for his friends. Archibald was fascinated by the blue sparks that emanate from the hides of the dark beasts and dedicated his life to its artificial reproduction, in a style of inquiry that incidentally closely followed the methodology of Bergenworth. Now this is where it gets a bit complicated, because it's been theorized that the corpse that we find the Upper Cathedral Ward key on in Yahargul is Archibald, and it's dressed in the garb of the choir. And if it's dressed in the garb of the choir, it would imply that, and if it is Archibald, I don't know if it is, but if it is Archibald, then that would imply that he was associated with the Healing Church, while it wouldn't make sense for the Healing Church to be banning things like the Beast Roar thing, Hunter Tool, if it was developed by the Healing Church. Like, that wouldn't make sense. So I'd like to, so Izzy is different. So Irreverent Izzy, and it talks about, let's see where I had it a second ago. I'll bring it back. Yeah, so Irreverent Izzy. So what's the deal with Irreverent Izzy? Redgrave has talked about this in the past, and he has a bit more insight on it, no pun intended, than I do. But it kind of ties into the idea of Vermin and kind of that living beasthood within men. And it reads, the indescribable sound is broadcast with the caster's own vocal cords, which begs the question, what terrible things lurk deep within the frames of men, which basically goes to imply that beasthood is innate. It already exists within the body of men, and it's something that we can't really escape. So what's Deso Penguin saying? Possibly some connection there, since Archibald seemed to focus specifically on the electrical aspects of the Dark Beast, while Izzy focused on the beasthood aspects. That's true. And that would, again, imply the difference between the two, because Archibald, it says that he wanted to pursue the Bergenworth style of looking at things, which is focusing more on like the electrical rather than the beasthood element. But the Healing Church is obviously more interested in the blood and beasthood side of it, which would, but again, it's forbidden. So, I mean, look, who knows? So, an Irreverent Izzy, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Abhorrent Beast boss, which we face off at with the Accursed Beggar, and also, actually, I want to get the Accursed Beggar's dialogue up as well to talk about. I'm pretty sure the Abhorrent Beast has lightning attacks, doesn't it? So, I mean, I've heard theories that the Irreverent Izzy actually transformed into one of these beasts at some point, which I guess is a possible. Abhorrent Beast is a kind of dark beast if it has lightning attacks, right? This is the Suspicious Beggar. Okay. Who says... okay, so I guess if we surmise that the Accursed Beggar is native to the Forbidden Woods, we can say, that would make it a really interesting character on top of its already kind of interesting, fact. The kind of already is originally interesting nature, is what I'm trying to say. So he says, blimey, don't scare me like that. On a night like this, I took you for a monster. I'll thank the stars, you're fairly normal. Was it you put down that awful beast? Oh, that thing had me trembling, frozen in me boots, and then you came along. If you're a hunter, then would you know of any safe havens? So that's pretty much par for the course. And then you tell him where he can head. It gives you a pungent blood cocktail. Okay, this is actually interesting as well. I had thought about the pungent blood cocktail, and it actually being kind of like a moonshine of sorts that's been developed in the Forbidden Woods. You can kind of think about that kind of moonshine stuff being developed outside of Yharnam. Now, I think I have some in my inventory, so I might be able to look at that. Okay, I do. So it says, mature blood cocktail that releases a pungent odor when thrown that attacks bloodthirsty beasts. A precious tool in sadly short supply. In Yharnam, they produce more blood than alcohol, as the former is more intoxicating. So it's a cocktail, so it's obviously meant to be drunk, which is interesting. Now, say it was kind of developed in the Forbidden Woods, it would make sense for the beggar to give you one as a gift, as thanks, which is interesting. That kind of that they were brewing pungent blood cocktails as well as developing things like beast blood pellets and stuff like that. This kind of like almost like hillbilly society of making these homebrew drugs and alcohol and things like that. Okay, so then he says, if you don't tell him of anywhere to go, he says, oh yes, of course not, I should have known, this whole place is falling apart once again, it's the curse of Yharnam. So again, he talks about the curse of Yharnam, whether he's talking about Queen Yharnam or otherwise is kind of your own interpretation of it, I guess. And since I'm talking about like the Forbidden Woods kind of having that tie to the League and Vermin, and that Vermin kind of exists within everybody, and that it's kind of this innate catalyst for the blood. It makes sense that, again, that we can possibly say that the beggar is native to the Forbidden Woods when he says, have you got a screw loose, or is it your animal intuition? You hunters must got more blood on your hands. So again, talking about your animal intuition as if saying that it's native, it exists within you, within whether or not you want to control it. And then again, when he says, when he gets to half health, says, die, die, die. Hunters are killers, nothing less. You call me a beast? A beast? What would you know? I didn't ask for this. So that's interesting as well. It's kind of saying that, like, you got the balls to call me a beast. You're the person that's been kind of killing everything up to this point, and then kind of calls everybody beasts. So, I mean, that's kind of interesting. It's just kind of like, I like how the Forbidden Woods is kind of this separate, this separate society to Yharnam as a whole as we know it. I find that kind of really interesting. Like, my whole interest, as most of you know, is more based in the societies and institutions of these games rather than specific characters or old gods and things like that themselves, because I find those things much more speculative, while I find discussing this sort of society stuff is much closer to like an anthropological kind of interpretation, which is much more kind of feasible. At least that's how I look at it. So where was I even going with that? I completely forgot. Yeah, so they kind of exist separately. They kind of, at least they have since Yharnam shut them off, I would assume. And they have their own sorts of thing. Now, let's talk a bit more about the, like, I guess the snakes and the shadows of Yharnam and such, because those are obviously quite interesting. Now, we don't know how long the shadows of Yharnam have been kind of in the Forbidden Woods, do we? I mean, they guard Byrgenwerth, but how long have they been there, and have they been corrupted? Just kind of waiting to be used to defend Byrgenwerth. And when I say defend Byrgenwerth, I mean they're essentially under the use of Mensis. So I would assume that they want to keep anyone from getting to Rom and kind of fucking up anything to do with the ritual. So that would imply, I guess, to me, that they might, like, it seems like when they kind of get afflicted by these snakes around halfway through the battle, it's not voluntary. They kind of grab their head as if they're in pain and stuff like that. And when they summon the snakes, they're kind of touching the ground and like acting different than they usually would. At least that's my interpretation of it. That in their wait to become useful as defenses, they have essentially been corrupted by the elements of the woods, especially the snakes, which have kind of corrupted them, or kind of, you know, taken a bite, like a bit by a snake down there. Whether that affects them or not is kind of an interesting element to kind of take. Eric asks, hey, if you believe Loran itself to be a desert nation, how would its Chalice dungeons be below the woods? No, I wasn't saying that Loran exists beneath the Chalice beneath the Forbidden Woods. I was saying that the Hintertombs exist below the Forbidden Woods, not Loran, the Hintertombs. So those are two different, those are two separated kind of areas of the dungeon. So I wasn't saying Loran. I was saying it's interesting that there's like sand and beaches below, you know, Yharnam in the giant sanctuary, but I don't think that means Loran is below. I would say that's the Hintertombs due to the snakes being everywhere. I think that would make sense. I would say Loran, no, I couldn't even think about where Loran is physically. Loran could be like thousands of miles away and only accessible in the Yharnam region through either, you know, a nightmare or a Chalice dungeon. So yeah, God, I'd love to talk about Loran as well, but let's continue through. So we can see that, you know, you've got these snake men as well, which kind of have these snakes living inside them. That might have been to an extent what was happening to the shadows of Yharnam. I mean, they might have been corrupted by these snakes. And in the same way, it seems like these denizens, like these just inhabitants of the Forbidden Woods, might have been attacked by these snakes as well, due to them being kind of having these snakes living inside their bodies. And they're literally, I would say at this point, the human body doesn't have the control. It's the snake body within that controls the body, like a literal parasite, like we can probably surmise is happening in the bloodletting beast situation. At least that's what I would say. And yeah, so it's interesting kind of thinking about when the human side of things loses control and it's just the beast side of things controlling things, because it seems to me that any villager that's spouting snakes out of their head, it's the villagers and the Madaras twins that would have tried to clean up after that by putting sacks on their heads and trying to keep them contained. That's my viewpoint on that. So if we continue further down, I'm kind of at the area where you into where the gravestones are with those amygdala heads everywhere. So we'll try and make some sense of that in a moment. Just getting rid of these snake people. They're kind of interesting because they're just kind of warm, like wandering back and forth. It's also interesting that these humanoids, the ones with snakes coming out of their head, don't have that elongated beast-like arm that you see on most of the residents of Yharnam. They have this like long arm, which is one of the first signs of beasthood, I guess, apart from it coming up, the right leg. Like literally pretty much all the Yharnamites have that, except for I'm pretty sure the guys that have the snake heads. So that's kind of interesting. It might imply that they never actually got blood transfusions through their arm. Maybe they just drank it, or the proximity to the snakes affected them in a negative way. So I'm actually up to where Valtr is. Now, Valtr, whatever. Valtr is an interesting character because it's probably most likely that he came from outside of Yharnam. He's not a native to Yharnam, but he also came spreading the message of the Confederacy and the League. So if we have a look at let's have a look at some of the clothes, the constable garb and things, because I have some of them. I don't have the helm, but I can look that up. It's just quicker if I do it on my screen. So the constable's garb has a description that reads, sorry, just excuse me a second. So the constable's garb reads, once upon a time, a troop of foreign constables sorry, it's me again. Don't want to burp into the mic. Chased a beast all the way to Yharnam, and this is what they wore. The constables became victims of the beast, except for one survivor who in turn devoured the creature whole, all by himself. This fable is a favourite among Yharnamites, who are partial to any stories of pompous, intolerant foreigners who suffer for their ignorance. It makes the blood taste that much sweeter. So that's kind of interesting, isn't it? And if we look at the constable's garb, it's really interesting. He's got a little whistle on his cape, which I don't think is kind of similar to the Madaras whistle. I think it's just that's what he uses. In terms of Valtr specifically, whether to rally, the Confederates or whatever. He's got a lamp on his hip and everything. It's very kind of old-timey, things like that. Or Walther, maybe it is pronounced like that. That's possible. I just want to check if the constable's gloves say anything different, or are they just the same? I think they're the same. Constable trousers, do I have those? I might not. Okay, I don't actually think I have those. Let me get that up. Constable. And he uses the whirligig saw, I believe. So if we have a look at that, it reads a trick weapon crafted by the workshop heretics, the powder kegs, and a weapon of choice by the old hunter Valtr, the beast eater. Though this weapon pummels beasts in its mace form, but its true strength lies in its attached mechanical saws. These discs, lined with serrated, spin rapidly, thrashing the flesh of beasts into fine shreds, which is interesting. Okay, so that pretty much is just the same as what we'd come to expect. I've got the Master's Iron Helm as well. So a single hole allows one to peek out with a single eye. That is probably all that the original owner had. The Iron Helm was passed down among masters of the League. Valtr had in fact lost the ability to see Vermin long ago. So that's got a couple interesting implications. So one theory that I thought was interesting, I forget who came up with it, but the fact that Valtr only has one eye is due to the fact that he might have been a victim of Mensis. In the fact that, you know, those eye-stealing women might have taken his eye. You know, they might have captured, but he escaped unharmed. And I think that's kind of semi-confirmed by the bloodshot eyeball that we can have a look at is one of the Chalice dungeon ingredients, which has a description that reads, an exquisite eyeball removed quickly after death or perhaps even before, used to unlock the seal of the old labyrinth hinter tomb. So perhaps even before implies that it's taken while the person's still alive. So imagine it would be interesting that Valtr's eye might have been taken out while he was still alive, but he was able to escape. Now, that's kind of interesting because for a couple reasons. Now, it's been pointed out that he only has one eye, but if we summon him in the DLC, I believe he has both eyes, and it doesn't look like he's blind in one of the eyes. Now, either this is an oversight by FromSoft, or he's kind of like one-eyed Valtr in the respect that he's one-eyed is that he can't see Vermin anymore, which is kind of interesting from the perspective that he can't see Vermin because, and that's why he's called one-eyed Valtr, if that makes sense. Like it's more of a metaphysical sight rather than actually being, you know, losing an eye. But you know that could come down to a couple different interpretations. So what does he say? What is this guy saying? So the Revicist says, I think he cut it out to avoid being sucked in the hunter's nightmare. That's true. That's a possibility as well. It's unfortunate that he is found in the nightmare. Despite that, although it seems that the most common way of avoiding that inevitability among the Yharnamites is actually to just cover their eyes with bandages. You see Gascoigne doing that. You see a number of other Yharnamites doing that. Especially just the normal Yharnamites, who we can see, at least in the E3 trailer, that they do have the blood-drunk eyes. I bet that doesn't mean that was the only attempt for something to be done. Making the eye you use as his, yeah. So that if you're referring to the actual blood-drunk eye belongs to Valtr, that's possible. That's definitely possible. I wonder if I think I've got it in my inventory. We could have a look at the description. Tells us anything specific. Eye of a blood-drunk hunter. Its pupil has collapsed and turned to mush, indicating the onset of the scourge of beasts. A hunter who goes drunk with blood is said to be taken by the nightmare, destined to wander forever, engage in an endless hunt. It is a fate that no hunter can escape. Yeah, so that definitely could have belonged to Valtr, definitely. That's really interesting. Although it's, I don't know, it's kind of, it's like a double-edged sword, because we know, what does it say, that Valtr actually ate a beast, consumed a beast that he hunted down, like with his bare hands, but he's still not like trapped in the dream. We can find, or the nightmare rather. He's kind of available to talk to us in his normal state. So that's kind of interesting. And I'm just going to kill him or fight him just so we can fight the younger Madaras brother, which would be kind of interesting to kind of see the Madaras whistle in action, actually get the Madaras whistle ourselves. I'm just going to fight him now. But yeah, just kind of include any topics that you think are interesting in the chat that we can talk about. Because again, I'm at the end of this script. I don't have a whole lot else to say in the Forbidden Woods just yet. I'm still kind of developing what I want to talk about. So yeah, feel free to kind of include anything that you think might be worth talking about. And I'll just finish off Valtr, or Valtr, whatever. It's destroying with his own whirligig saw. Okay, he's nearly dead. Okay, and he's dead. Yeah, so he just dies. Glory to my lead Confederates. You get the one iron helm. And then we come out, and I believe that the younger twin should be coming to kill us. Or maybe we have to. Oh, there he is. Yeah, I'm just going to jump out of the dream and come back. So what's Desert Penguin? Remember that you can only summon Valtr Beast Eater after completing his quest, like Henrik and Yamamura perhaps, who you can summon only after killing them. That is some timey-wimey stuff going on. You can summon Valtr's past himself as Beast Eater. Yeah, the Eye of Valtr's connection is kind of significant since the Eye of Valtr got introduced to the game simultaneously. Oh, was Valtr not in the game pre-DLC? I did not know that, because I only played the game post-DLC. But I guess it would make sense if he's using the whirligig saw, right? Okay, let's go back to the Forbidden Woods lamp and have a look at Madaras. Yeah, so I've already commented on the Shadows of Yharnam. That's kind of all I've got in mind for them at the moment. I still need to think about that a bit more in terms of developing that. But yeah, the Shadows of Yharnam are really interesting. I will kind of include one thing that seems to be a big misconception in the community. People seem to think that they're using a Chikage as their weapon, but it's actually not a Chikage. It's their own weapon, their own kind of katana that is not a it's definitely not a Chikage, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, so the younger Madaras twin, who actually seems to be quite old, he's got like an aged looking face. Yeah, he was added in the DLC update. Okay, I did not know that. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, I'm gonna fight the Madaras twin now as well, so I can get the Madaras whistle. But yeah, the Madaras twins, the Forbidden Woods and all that, really kind of interesting as a whole kind of concept thing. I really like how they're kind of it's all kind of included inside the whole lore of the game. Oh yeah, so he just summons the snake, which is this giant fucking snake. And it's interesting because snake skeletons and snake kind of looking corpses are found within the Chalice dungeons as well, like are really, really large, like unnatural looking snakes. So that's something to think about as well. Yeah, it's kind of more of a scimitar. You're right, Dezo. But yeah, I need to kind of think about the shadows more before I kind of talk about them in any kind of great detail. Madaras whistle. Oh, do I not have an arcane thing high enough to use it? Really? It seems weird. What does it need? Oh, it needs blood tinge. Okay, well I guess that's interesting that the Madaras twin actually the Madaras whistle actually requires blood tinge rather than arcane to use. I hadn't thought about that. Because obviously blood tinge is something that's associated with Canehurst, and Canehurst are Thumerians, so I guess again that it would make sense for the snake to have come from the Chalice dungeons, which is kind of the home to the Thumerians, even though the Hintertombs are kind of stretching it a little bit. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where my thoughts are at with the Forbidden Woods at the moment. We've been going for like an hour and a half now, so I might wrap it up in a few minutes. But yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm going at the moment. I'm going to expand the script and make it into an actual video, because obviously more people will probably watch an actual concentrated video rather than a live stream, which will kind of, that's kind of the focus of the channel and the content. What's chat saying? What if Beast Eater Valtr is the earlier version through his use of the whirligig saw base his moniker that he was chewing up beasts that led to his blood drunk state? Yeah, no, I guess it's possible. Chronology is something that's really difficult to work with in terms of Bloodborne, obviously, because it is so quote unquote convoluted. But nonetheless, it's still interesting because I still do think a timeline does exist that can be explored and kind of expanded upon and such. Thanks, Xanthus, appreciate that. So also, if some of you guys haven't seen the new Fallout video, I suggest you go watch it, because it's part of the new kind of content expansion, moving outside of Dark Souls and Bloodborne and stuff a little bit like that. And we've still got the last DLC to come out for Dark Souls 3, which I'll probably be talking about. Hopefully there's stuff in it that interests me. Again, you guys know what my interests in these sorts of things are. Not totally in for the highly speculative stuff, but that's why you subscribe to me, I guess, to look about the more societal stuff that goes on in the games. But yeah, it's all kind of coming together. There's a lot of new content kind of on the horizon, just trying to balance everything with university and life and YouTube channels and stuff simultaneously can be a bit tough. But I'll try and do a live stream and a video every once in a while and keep that going. Angels, yeah, the angels, the angelic kind of faith and stuff are going to be something that's, I think, definitely going to be covered. I think I'm going to try and cover a whole lot of shit in the Ring City, honestly. Like, it's almost like they're going to be rushing a little bit. There's been some quote-unquote leaks, which I don't know, honestly, if they're to be trusted or not, that people say they've already uncovered the boss listing. And I won't talk about that here, obviously, because you guys don't want to be spoiled, or there'll be some of you that don't want to be spoiled on that. But yeah, I mean, if it's true, then it seems like they're trying to cover quite a bit. If it's not true, then whatever, we'll just have to wait. I mean, look, it comes out at the end of this month. It's on its way. But yeah, if you guys want to ask any general kind of Q&A things on different topics related to Bloodborne or Dark Souls or Fallout or whatever, now I'm like here to do that for a couple of minutes, and then I'll probably shut it off and continue with my afternoon. But yeah, just if you have anything to say or ask, that's all good. What's chat saying? I think the timeline idea definitely is implied by the clock and the teleportation tombstones. Both are linked to place and a time. Yeah, definitely. I definitely think that's true. In terms of Loran, we could say that's like post Beasthood, or post their kind of encounter with the old, with the great ones and things like that. That's definitely true. See, this is one constriction of Soulsborne games, is that the only way that these games would really work as these games that we've come to really love and enjoy is within the context of they have to be set within some kind of post-apocalyptic state. They have to be, you're on your own, you're surrounded by enemies, and you're trying to get somewhere before the end of the world happens. That's kind of how it's set. There's no kind of... these games can't really be built around the idea, at least the way I think, that it's like you can't set it within like a world that hasn't kind of dissolved into kind of like anarchy yet. They're all always set within this certain context, which is, maybe constrictive, but obviously allows for the game to kind of have its own kind of nature, which is fine as well. But yeah, I think it will become a little bit constrictive at some point. It's a reason why we haven't been able to see, like, pretty much every kingdom we come into contact with in like Dark Souls is already fallen, because we can't go wandering around a kingdom that's already like in good stead, because it's not really a Souls game anymore. I guess the closest we got to that was Dark Souls 2 with Drang Lake, and going into the memories of the giants and seeing like a semi-functional, well, actually a kingdom under siege, but at least we actually see the siege rather than just hearing about it in an item description. I do like Dark Souls 2 now to a greater degree than I did, which is a kind of an opinion I've gone back on. So is it Cos or Cosm? Well, I guess that's all up to your interpretation of the lore, my dude. Sam Hyde lore definitely we'll have to get into at some stage. Darkside Phil lore, definitely something to get into. I've been thinking about doing a series in the future, maybe called like Depths of Degeneracy or something, and just having a look at like certain internet personalities like Chris Chan or DSP or just other kind of, interesting internet personalities, and just kind of covering their kind of lore, quote unquote. Yeah, the shit is going down perspective is definitely more interesting, I would say, from like a gameplay point of view. Like Dark Souls is like, I still kind of, yeah, I think everyone wants more Souls content, and seeing how they'll go with that, whether they do like a sci-fi Souls next or something, which I think a lot of people think they will be quite an interesting topic to cover. Something else I'll point out just while I've got it here up on my screen. It seems like the butcher garb and like butcher clothes do have quite a bit of like snake like motifs on them. So if we have a look, if you have a look at the back, and also from the from the front, there kind of is like a what's it called, like a caracatus or something like that snake thing that you see in terms of like hospitals and medicine and stuff like that. That seems to be on them, which is kind of interesting as like a visual motif. Oh, did they say the next one will be weird in terms of their next game? Okay. Well, I mean, Bloodborne's pretty weird. I'm sure they're capable of it, whatever they choose to do. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm kind of excited of it for it one way or another. I'm sure it'll be fun. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I've got to say on that for the moment. Nice little podcast for you to listen to in the background while you're gaming or whatever. And I'll be back with some more content in the future, so look forward to that. And yeah, so there are executioner and butcher similarities that you should kind of have a look at. Like, that's what kind of shook me, that these big dudes are not executioners, i.e. with Alfred, they're kind of part of the Forbidden Wood Enclave, which is interesting. I'm talking about the enemy and the attire. They share the same design. Yeah, they do. That's something I didn't realize because of the big cloak, but you are right. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to talk to me again later, I'll put the I'll update the description with like links to Discord and social media if you want to chat to me about anything. But yeah, be good to each other. Enjoy your weekend if it's your weekend, if that's your time zone at the moment, and yeah, have fun. So catch you guys later.